What's up, party people? All right, who we kidding? You're not partying. You're reading a book. Listen, my name's Chris. I'm a bookaholic. You know this. So today, it's a little bit broader of a spectrum. I want to look at a couple books that I think are phenomenal, that very few people seem to talk about. And actually, even within certain circles, you're going to find that there's a little bit of these diamonds in the rough that I kind of want to unearth and present to you. Without further ado, let's do this. Here's the first. Super unheard of. But I remember I read this in practically a couple days, like just bam, and that is Louis L'Amour's Last of the Breed. And I know when most of you think of Louis L'Amour, you think cowboy writer, John Wayne-esque kind of movies, and yeah, all of that fits. He's certainly a legend in the kind of cowboy world. Hondo. The thing about these Louis L'Amour books is that they've been super influential, and actually I have kind of a small little affection for Louis L'Amour because my father-in-law had this huge stack, probably about 30 Louis L'Amour books that I wanted, like Sackets were calling to me. And I remember asking him numerous times if I could have them in some form and fashion. I would subtly say something like, "Can I have them?" And basically, the answer was, no, not yet. And then one day, he gave them all to me, and it's fantastic. This might have been one of the books in that little pile that I dove into. Unbeknownst to me, it turned out to be an incredible story, way different than anything I had previously read up until that point with Louis L'Amour. And this is basically kind of a survivor story. He's in the middle of nowhere and has to make it. And I love that out of all of the people that seem to revere and respect L'Amour's writing, nobody talks about this book, and it's so good. So if you like those kind of books where somebody's like lost in the middle of the wilderness, a big plane crash and all that, stuff, and they got to survive. Like, this is going to scratch that itch, and it's fast-paced, and it's hardcore, and I loved it. Look at that. Like, he looks like he could get lost in the woods and find his way out. That's what I'm saying. That's the first. The Cliff Janeway series by John Dunning. I'll talk about him in another video at some point, but at the end of the day, I love John Dunning, and especially love the Cliff Janeway books. This is just a simple, kind of bookstore owner in the Colorado area who ends up finding himself in a variety of scenarios and situations where, he has to kind of play the sleuth. And it kind of has all the things that a book collector pre-internet would be familiar with, so the hunt and trying to find these books, in actual stores, and knowing that the value of it is, the find of the century and all that. I mean, now we have all of these amazing digital mediums that are available to us, but back in the day, you'd have to kind of go into these stores and these random little thrift places to actually get a hold of books, and you never really knew if you were going to have your collection complete. The Cliff Janeway series puts you in that kind of a world, and with the mystery dynamic involved, I loved the series. The tragic thing is that, and I've probably mentioned this before, but John Dunning suffered some sickness. At one point, I thought it was a stroke, but I don't think that's right. Long and the short of it is, he's not really able to write anymore, and so unfortunately, we're not going to see any more from that series. But if you've ever been interested in books about books that have a mystery kind of feel to it, this guy, his stuff is going to scratch your itch. All right, so here we go. Okay, Bill Bryson, The Lost Continent. Let me just simply say, Bill Bryson, I knew nothing about, and then I got this book, and I realized, holy crap, just that introductory, paragraph, I thought, this guy, I'm going to love his stuff. And I just want to take a second because, see, I grew up in the Dakotas, North and South Dakota, not at the same time. My dad's in the St. Paul area, and all that to say, my childhood is these kind of, small town, mid-America kind of vibes. I'm very familiar with it. So Yeah, this starts out in Des Moines. I come from Des Moines. Somebody had to. When you come from Des Moines, you either accept the fact without question and settle down with a local girl named Bobby and get a job at the Firestone factory and live there forever and ever, or you spend your adolescence moaning at length about what a dump it is and how you can't wait to get out, and then you settle down with a local girl named Bobby and get a job at the Firestone factory and live there forever and ever. I freaking loved this book. I mean, again, part of it's just because it kind of reminded me a little bit of my past, and his sense of humor is awesome. And he's written tons and tons of books, a lot of travel commentaries that are pretty funny, and he's a great storyteller. If you've not read anything by Mr. Bryson, this might be a good place to start. I mean, for me, it was a fantastic beginning. He's got some books about his time in England and trips, I think, over into Australia and the like. He's got lots of great stuff, so you should find enough there that you'll enjoy. Okay, here's a book, Louise Erdrich, and I don't even know if I could love this author more. Now, I actually haven't read this one yet. This is on my TBR list. It's pretty high up. I'll get to it. But I've read a ton of books by her. And my favorites by far, the two that stand out to me as being phenomenal, are The Roundhouse and The Watchmen. Very different books, but all, in a lot of ways in the same kind of world. So she's got some North Dakota connections going on, some Minnesota connections going on. And so for me, as I said, as a small boy growing up in the Dakotas, and my mother taught at St. Joseph's Indian School there, and obviously there in the South Dakota area, we had a lot of Native American students. This kind of stuff, these kind of books by her, maybe not this one exactly, because this is about a bookstore. Her writing just kind of really is phenomenal. So, I mean, The Roundhouse is kind of a gut punch. It's pretty hardcore. And you're not going to be like thinking, oh, what a happy-go-lucky. I mean, this is a kind of a coming of age in a scenario and circumstance that's very difficult. And but it's such a unbelievably well done book. And from what I understand, Louise Erdrich has a difficult story herself. Her rise to success is well deserved. She's very vulnerable and honest in her writing, and paints a picture that I found to be very familiar. So it's fairly authentic in terms of kind of this time period and these small little areas. So, anywho, I love it. This is on my list. I'll probably snag this in 2023 here. We'll see. Most of you have probably heard about this a long time ago, Mexican Gothic. This was my first experience with Sylvia Marino Garcia, and I have no idea why I said it like that. But I loved this book, but not overwhelmingly loved this book. What I mean by that is I found myself very interested and invested in this book. And I did love it. It just was probably about a 4.5 star instead of a 5. So that's kind of what I'm trying to say. I think. I'd have to check, actually. Maybe it was a 4 star. Long and the short of it is, this is kind of that idea of this. It's like a feeling of almost paralysis. Like, why can't you break free? Why can't you rid yourself of this? You know something's going wrong. You know that her surroundings are not healthy and good. You know that there's going to be some problems, and she's trapped like in this house with these people and this kind of family dynamic that's obviously evil in so many ways, and yet she's kind of like falling and striding in step with the very things that she's trying to undo and stop. And the culmination of this is fantastic. It's a pretty fantastic ending. That being said, I think this has some really excellent literary qualities as well as just a fascinating story. There's a lot at work with serious writers besides just let me entertain you. And what I think is true is that Moreno Garcia is a serious writer. And she's not just writing a very cool story about a house that's, kind of maintaining and almost embodying the evil within. But there is so much more going on on behind the scenes. And so it's worth diving into. It's a great horror story of sorts, connected with really dysfunctional family dynamics and feeling trapped and needing a relief and a release. Anyway, check it out. Last but not least, and I'll probably kind of highlight this later in some other type of a book series, but it's Used and Rare by Lawrence and Nancy Goldstone. Now, I will say there's a number of books in this series, like Slightly Chipped and More Warmly Inscribed. Here's another one. They're not terribly difficult, but it's in some ways it's kind of that whole idea of following around a couple that's infatuated and in love with books and trying to find out, the value and the worth of certain books that they're happening upon or searching for. And again, because I'm kind of a bookaholic, I loved it. If you're interested in any more recommendations, keep tuned into the channel. I think you're going to like it.